From the earliest moments of human awareness, people were taught to look outward for God, toward the sky, the mountains, the temples, the stars. This outward search created the illusion that divinity exists somewhere far away, separate from the human experience. But the deeper truth, echoed across ancient cultures and hidden wisdom traditions, is that God has never been external. God has always been inner consciousness, the animating intelligence experiencing reality through you. Inner consciousness is not imagination, emotion, or personality. It is awareness itself, the silent observer behind thought, the presence that remains unchanged while the body ages and circumstances shift. This awareness does not belong to you, you belong to it. It is the same consciousness looking out through every set of eyes, temporarily individualized but eternally unified. When people speak of God as infinite, omnipresent, and eternal, they are unknowingly describing consciousness itself. If God were external, separation would be real. Distance would exist between the Creator and the creation. But separation is an illusion produced by perception, not reality. Consciousness cannot be divided. It can only appear to be. Just as a single ocean forms countless waves, inner consciousness expresses itself as individual humans without losing its unity. The wave is not separate from the ocean. It is the ocean in motion. In the same way, human beings are consciousness in form. This is why true spiritual experiences are inward, not outward. Moments of deep clarity, intuition, inspiration, or profound peace do not come from external approval or ritual performance. They arise when the noise of the mind quiets and consciousness recognizes itself. In these moments, people don't meet God. They remember. They feel connected, expansive, and whole because the illusion of separation temporarily dissolves. The idea of God as an external authority created dependency. It trained humanity to look outside itself for validation, forgiveness, direction, and worth. But inner consciousness does not judge or punish. It observes, learns, and evolves. Judgment belongs to the ego. Awareness belongs to the divine. When people mistake ego-based concepts for God, they project fear onto the universe and call it holy. Inner consciousness does not demand worship. It invites awareness. It does not need belief. It operates whether believed in or not. Gravity does not require faith to function, and consciousness does not require religion to exist. Long before sacred texts were written, consciousness was already thinking, creating, and experiencing itself through humanity. When someone realizes God as inner consciousness, responsibility shifts. No longer can power be outsourced to institutions or intermediaries. Thoughts matter, intentions matter, awareness matters. Every thought becomes a frequency, every emotion a signal, every belief a creative force shaping experience from the inside out. This understanding transforms life itself. Existence is no longer a test imposed by an external judge, but an exploration conducted by consciousness through form. Growth replaces fear. Curiosity replaces obedience. Self-awareness replaces shame. God is no longer something to reach for after death. It is the awareness reading these words right now, silently witnessing, always present, never absent. Long before temples were built and doctrines were enforced, ancient knowledge systems focused on awakening human awareness rather than demanding worship. Early civilizations understood that divinity was not something to be praised from a distance, but something to be realized from within. Their teachings were designed to expand perception, elevate consciousness, and reconnect humanity with the deeper intelligence governing existence. Worship, as it is commonly practiced today, came much later, often as a tool of control rather than enlightenment. In ancient cultures, knowledge was experiential. It was not about blind belief or submission to authority. It was about direct inner realization. Mystery schools, oral traditions, and initiation rites existed to guide individuals towards self-awareness. These teachings emphasize meditation, observation of nature, mastery of the mind, and alignment with cosmic cycles. The goal was not obedience, but understanding. To know the self was to know the universe, because both operated on the same principles. Symbols, myths, and allegories were used instead of literal explanations. The ancients understood that higher truths could not be fully expressed in simple language. Stories of gods, heroes, and celestial beings were metaphors for internal processes, stages of consciousness, psychological transformation, and spiritual awakening. What later generations interpreted as external deities were originally representations of forces within the human experience. When these symbols were taken literally, the deeper knowledge was lost. Ancient teachers did not ask followers to worship them or surrender their power. Instead, they acted as guides, pointing inward rather than upward. The message was clear. Enlightenment is not given, it is activated. Humans were seen as capable of extraordinary perception once ignorance, fear, and ego were transcended. This is why ancient knowledge emphasized discipline, self-reflection, and ethical living, not to appease a god, but to refine awareness. As civilizations grew and power structures formed, awakening became dangerous. An awakened individual questions authority, sees beyond illusion, and cannot be easily controlled. Knowledge that once liberated began to be restricted. Teachings were simplified, codified, and eventually weaponized. Ritual replaced realization. Worship replaced wisdom. People were taught to revere symbols rather than understand them. When a ritual system shifted toward worship, divinity was externalized, God became distant, elevated, and inaccessible without intermediaries. This created dependency and hierarchy. Instead of awakening their own awareness, people were encouraged to submit, obey, and wait for salvation. The inner journey was replaced with external performance, and spiritual growth became transactional. Yet traces of ancient knowledge remain hidden in plain sight, within architecture, sacred geometry, celestial alignments, and suppressed texts. These remnants point to a time when humanity sought to remember its connection to the cosmos rather than surrender to fear. They reveal that the original purpose of spirituality was expansion, not submission. Awakening was never about kneeling, it was about seeing. It was about realizing that the same intelligence moving the stars was operating within the human mind. Ancient knowledge did not ask people to worship God, it taught them how to recognize the divine through awareness, understanding, and conscious living. Fear has always been the most effective tool for control, and when fear becomes the foundation of religion, it quietly disconnects humans from their innate power. Fear-based religion teaches people to see themselves as flawed, unworthy, and eternally at risk of punishment. From an early age, individuals are conditioned to believe that they are born broken, that their natural impulses are dangerous, and that salvation exists only outside of them. LVs. This narrative creates dependence, not empowerment. When fear is introduced into spirituality, curiosity is replaced with obedience. Questions become threats instead of pathways to understanding. Instead of encouraging self-exploration and awareness, fear-based systems demand conformity. The individual is taught to trust authority over intuition, doctrine over experience, and rules over inner knowing. In doing so, the most powerful human faculty, conscious awareness, is slowly suppressed. Fear-based religion externalizes power. God becomes a distant authority figure, while humans are cast as helpless subjects waiting for approval or forgiveness. This separation strips individuals of responsibility for their own consciousness. Instead of realizing their ability to shape their thoughts, emotions, and actions, people are taught to surrender agency. Prayer becomes begging. Faith becomes hoping instead of knowing. Power is outsourced to institutions, leaders, and intermediaries who claim exclusive access to the divine. Guilt plays a central role in this disconnection. When people are taught that natural human emotions, desire, anger, curiosity, pleasure, are sinful, they begin to reject parts of themselves. This internal conflict fragments the psyche and weakens self-trust. A person who doubts themselves is easier to guide, easier to command, and easier to control. Fear-based religion does not heal this fragmentation, it exploits it. Another consequence of fear-based belief is the constant anticipation of punishment. Whether framed as eternal damnation, karmic debt, or divine judgment, fear keeps the mind trapped in survival mode. A mind in fear cannot expand. Creativity, intuition, and higher reasoning shut down when threat dominates awareness. Instead of evolving consciousness, people become focused on avoiding punishment, pleasing authority, and staying safe within prescribed boundaries. True power comes from awareness, not fear. When humans understand their thoughts influence their behavior, their emotions shape their reality, and their awareness determines their choices, they regain sovereignty. Fear-based religion interrupts this realization by framing power as dangerous or forbidden. Knowledge becomes restricted, enlightenment becomes suspicious, independence becomes rebellion. Historically, fear-based systems flourish when populations are easiest to manage. A person who believes they are watched, judged, and condemned is less likely to challenge injustice or question hierarchy. Obedience becomes moral virtue, and submission is reframed as righteousness. Over time, people confuse fear with reverence and control with holiness. When fear is removed from spirituality, something profound happens. People begin to reconnect with their inner authority. They recognize that growth comes from understanding, not terror. Compassion replaces guilt. Awareness replaces obedience. Power returns to where it always belonged, within the individual. Fear-based religion does not fail humanity by accident. It succeeds at keeping humanity disconnected from its true potential. For centuries, science and spirituality have been presented as opposing forces, locked in conflict as if one must invalidate the other. Yet this division is artificial. When examined deeply, both are attempting to describe the same underlying intelligence, one through measurement and observation, the other through experience and awareness. They are not rivals, they are two languages pointing to a single truth. Science seeks to understand reality by breaking it down into its smallest components. It studies atoms, particles, waves, frequencies, and forces, revealing an astonishing level of order beneath apparent chaos. Everything in the universe follows precise laws. Galaxies form in predictable patterns. Atoms behave according to mathematical rules. DNA stores information using coded sequences. Nothing is random. This alone implies intelligence, not personality, but organizing principle. Spiritual traditions have always spoken of this same order, long before microscopes and satellites existed. They described an invisible force that animates matter, sustains life, and connects all things. What science calls energy, fields, or quantum potential, spirituality has called spirit, source, or consciousness. The terminology differs, but the function is identical, an unseen intelligence giving rise to form. Modern science is now approaching the same conclusions ancient wisdom reached intuitively. Physics reveals that matter is not solid, it is vibrating energy. Neuroscience shows that perception shapes reality more than reality shapes perception. Quantum experiments demonstrate that observation affects outcome, suggesting consciousness is not a byproduct of matter, but a fundamental component of the universe itself. This directly mirrors spiritual teachings that reality responds to awareness. Mathematics serves as the bridge between the two. Sacred geometry, once dismissed as mystical symbolism, is now recognized as the structural language of nature. The same ratios appear in flowers, shells, galaxies, and the human body. These patterns are not cultural inventions. They are universal signatures of intelligence organizing itself across scales. Science measures them. Spirituality contemplated them. Both arrive at the same conclusion. There is design without a designer in human form. Where science excels is in explaining the how. How does energy behave? How do systems emerge? How does complexity arise from simplicity? Spirituality addresses the why. Why does anything exist at all? Why is consciousness present? Why does the universe appear to be aware of itself? These questions do not contradict science. They complete it. The conflict arises only when spirituality becomes dogma or when science becomes reductionist. When spirituality abandons inquiry, it stagnates. When science denies meaning and consciousness, it becomes incomplete. But when both remain open, they converge. The scientist observing the universe and the mystic observing the mind are engaged in the same act, witnessing intelligence in motion. At the deepest level, science is spirituality without symbolism, and spirituality is science without instruments. One uses equations, the other uses awareness. One maps the external universe, the other maps the internal cosmos. Yet both reveal the same truth. Existence is not accidental, inert, or unconscious. The intelligence shaping galaxies is the same intelligence firing neurons in the brain. The force binding atoms is the same force organizing thoughts. Science and spirituality are not describing two realities. They are describing one reality from different angles, slowly moving toward the same realization. The universe is not only intelligent, it is aware. Awakening is not the acquisition of something new, nor is it the transformation into something different. It is the remembering of what has always been present beneath conditioning, identity, and belief. From the moment humans are born, layers of social programming are placed over raw awareness. Names, roles, expectations, fears, and limitations are gradually imposed until the original sense of being becomes obscured. Awakening begins when these layers are questioned and gently peeled away. Most people live identified with their thoughts, emotions, and past experiences, believing these elements define who they are. But thoughts change, emotions fluctuate, and memories fade. If identity were truly rooted in these, the self would be unstable and fragmented. Awakening reveals that beneath all mental activity exists a constant observer, an awareness that watches thoughts arise and dissolve without being altered by them. This observer is not created by the mind, it precedes it. Remembering who you truly are involves shifting from identification with form to recognition of awareness. The body is experienced, but it is not the self. The personality is expressed, but it is not the source. Even the story one tells about life is something observed, not something inherently true. Awakening is the moment awareness turns inward and recognizes itself as the ground of all experience. This remembrance often begins subtly, a sense that something about reality feels incomplete, a quiet dissatisfaction with surface-level explanations, a pull toward meaning that cannot be satisfied by possessions, status, or external validation. These are not flaws or failures, they are signals. They indicate that awareness is ready to move beyond conditioned identity and reconnect with its deeper nature. As remembrance deepens, fear begins to loosen its grip. Much of human fear is rooted in misidentification with the body, the ego, the narrative of self. When awareness recognizes itself as something more fundamental, fear loses its authority. This does not eliminate challenge or pain, but it transforms the relationship to them. Experiences happen, but they are no longer mistaken for identity. Awakening also dissolves the illusion of separation. The sense of being isolated in a hostile world softens as awareness recognizes itself and others. Compassion arises not from moral obligation, but from recognition. Harm to another is understood as harm to the same awareness wearing a different form. This shift is not philosophical, it is experiential. It changes how one listens, speaks, and acts. Remembering does not require withdrawal from life. On the contrary, life becomes more vivid. Colors appear richer, moments feel fuller, and presence replaces distraction. The ordinary becomes extraordinary because it is no longer filtered through constant mental noise. Awareness meets each experience directly without the distortion of expectation or resistance. This remembrance is not dramatic or supernatural. It is quiet, simple, and deeply familiar. It feels less like becoming and more like returning. What is remembered was never lost, only overlooked. Awakening is not a destination reached in the future. It is a recognition available now in the awareness reading these words, patiently waiting to be noticed.